It's October 23rd, 2000. We're just heading seaward along the west Pictou River area near Durham. We're flying at about 70 to 75 miles per hour, about 400 feet. We're just going by the town of Durham here, the bridge that crosses the river. It's quite narrow in this section, and then as we go seaward, it becomes a little bit wider, more meandering, with scouring on one side and deposition on the other. There's quite a few farms and different sort of land use activities along this part of the river compared to the outer Pictou Harbour area. You can see some of the shallow areas, the lighter parts of the river. And you can see deposition on the on this side of the river. Coming up to this next part of the river out near the new bridge, you get a little bit wider channel with two large areas of wetland vegetation. You're just looking at the first one. Time is 17:05. We're on a falling. Actually, the tide was low at around 16:30, I believe. So it's starting to rise again. But we're pretty well near low tide. Passing the new bridge back into the outer part of the west arm of Pictou Harbour. The shoreline changes back into more of a natural shoreline, except for a few properties where boulders and so on have been gathered. The low areas of wetland and marsh vegetation. Much of the shoreline is poorly developed beach. It's mostly vegetated back shore, 1 to 3 meters scarp if eroded, and then a low gradient beach which is maybe 5 to 10 meters wide. It's going by the school. I don't know which one it is. It's probably the Lions Brook. No, it may not be that far yet. There's a couple beaches along here that are better developed. They must be just aligned with the axis of the harbor. And we're just coming up in the Lions Brook now. (1707), and there's a ridge that extends a long ways offshore. Looks like it may be artificial. It's hard to tell, but it's a very coarse slag. Don't know what used to be there. There's another one on the next headland as well. Coming up to Gavin Islet. There's a bit of a flanking strip behind it. The shores along here are typical of the low wave energy environments. Not much beach development, mostly vegetated backshore. Accumulation of driftwood and debris in the little embayments. And a very narrow beach, very low gradient, mixture of sediment, mud to pebble size probably. The geology in this area is probably mostly Pictou group, sandstone shales, conglomerates, Carboniferous age. We'll be approaching the town of Pictou soon. We're coming up to Halliburton and then Browns Point on the opposite side. We're just going by Halliburton now. Bit of artificial protection along the shoreline. Used to be the railway bridge, I guess. That went across there. No longer. And then as we head out to Browns Point, there's a couple points that are artificially anchored with riprap. I think it's a parking through here now as walking trails. As you approach the highway, again, it's a little bit more relief in the back shore. Mixture of sediment in the intertidal, but poorly sorted, very little wave energy. And we'll just cross the highway now and head into Pictou itself. Founded in 1773. It's famous for its ship, the Hector, which was rebuilt and launched this year. That was the name of the ship that the settlers came over from Scotland and so on. It's a pretty little town. Along the waterfront you have a walking trail, and there's some artificial riprap added, and then low angle foreshore with flats, mud flats and cobble flats. They're just going across the downtown area of Pictou. The Key, as they call it. Just looking down at downtown Pictou, this was settled around 1773 when people came over on the ship, the Hector. And as a matter of fact, this year they've just finished building the replica of the Hector, and it's just in the foreground along the wharves now. Also in the background you can see, I think it's the old railway station, and also several of the finger piers and wharves. Most are wood, concrete, a bit of riprap in the inner shores. Almost all of the shores are artificial. The time is 1711 and we're flying at about 400 feet. A great view of Pictou, a great little town, and we'll be coming up on the shipyards in a minute. Again, a mixture of shores, most artificial, rock or concrete or wood. There's a dry dock coming up in the view now. Coming up to the yacht club, I guess, Pictou. You see a lot of the outer shore again is artificial, riprap and boulder. Bit of a marina in behind. And then as we head out to the harbour towards Bray Shore and Loudon's Beach, we'll cross by CD Point. There's a cable that goes under the water there. The shoreline here again is a very mixed sediment. It's just below the golf course. It's probably derived from the eroding cliffs above. There's some small forelands that have developed as the waves have deposited sediment on the way into the harbour. The back shore is probably 3 to 6 meters high in places. There's a low gradient mixed sediment sand flat. You can call it sand flat, I guess, mud flat. Just coming up on the flanking spit at Loudon's Beach. Just seeing the end of it there now. Well-developed sand beach with marsh vegetation in behind. There's boardwalk at the far end of it, just coming into view. And there's multiple dune ridges and a wide sand beach. Appears to be prograding at the north end of it. Well, sort of northeast end of it. There's a very wide ridge and runnel or sand flat in front. This sand probably moves in onto the main beach and develops the beach ridges like you see at the waterside. Once we leave that area, however, we switch right back into a coarser substrate beach. Better defined. There is a lot of artificial material been added in some of the shore properties. But it's pretty well mixed, very coarse material, pretty close to bedrock. Coming out to Coal Point and then Sandy Cove. Sandy Cove, as its name implies, in the background is a large sand beach. There's a small outlet right now that's open, but it's anchored by a headland in the foreground, which is glacial material over bedrock exposed in the near shore. And it's about 6 to 12 meters high. Very large plume of suspended sediment off this beach, red color. The beach, although Sandy Cove, is switched in a fair bit of pebble cobble in the lower intertidal, as well as the storm ridge is more pebble cobble. So it appears to have switched around a bit. As we approach Logan Point, you can see the back shore is mostly farmland or scrub brush. There's an erosional cliff gullied in the back shore, and then at the base of it is a very coarse substrate, and underneath that is a bedrock outcrop which extends offshore as a rock platform, a low-tide terrace. There's quite a bit of suspended sediment in the water today. The rock outcrops probably have some role in trapping and with the sediment transport in this area. It's an erosional coast all the way around the corner. In fact, when you get to the Pictou Lodge, one of the grand old lodges in Nova Scotia, you can see they have an erosional problem as well, and they've tried to solve it with some groins series there. There's a small inlet to Graham's Pond in behind, and their access road comes right along the shoreline, so they've been trying to protect it. There's an erosional bluff, and then a retaining wall just before the trailer park. Most of this beach is sand. There's some pebble cobble in the storm ridge, and some mixed in with the beach. And there's a small outlet at this pond coming up in the view now. Just coming up on Caribou Cliffs. These are eroding at a rate of about 0.26 to 0.41 meters a year. We've been measuring them since '81, and they've lost about 16 to 18 meters. As part of a provincial park, you see there's a slow erosion rate and a wide sand beach in front of them. Setting out onto Monroe's Island, which is a wilderness preserve. This beach that joins Monroe's Island to the mainland is called Little Caribou Spit. It's a fairly continuous dune line. You can see an old channel in behind at this location, and at the far end, as you get to Monroe's Island, there's more wetland and overwash. Monroe's Island, although it's taken care of by the Nature Conservancy of Canada as a wilderness reserve, is a series of small islands joined by beaches and spits. In a lot of cases where the higher relief is, you can see an erosional scarp along the base of the trees. There seems to be a much wider intertidal zone with coarse material from boulder to mud. Very low gradient. You can see some of the elongated gravel patches in this wide intertidal. This embayment is almost enclosed off, very small outlet inlet. A spit on the one side, wetland on the east side, and then on the other side of this small headland, which is also eroded, there's a more continuous barrier beach, although it does show evidence of wave overwash at the east end. The intertidal platform seems to be more exposed at each one of the higher relief areas of the island. In this particular area, there's a very wide prograded beach ridge complex anchored by the small island and the larger island that's just coming into view. very large sand beach, and then again you go into a much wider intertidal coarse substrate at this larger part of the island. Coming up around on the other side of Monroe's Island, there have been several really good examples of prograded dune structures. In fact, right here, coming into the end where the ferry comes in, there's a very good prograded dune foreland, multiple dune ridges and a wide sand flat. Our time right now is 17:20, and we're just circling Monroe's Island, which is actually part of a wilderness reserve held by the Nature Conservancy of Canada. You see the wide, extensive sand flats, ridge and runnel topography in the lower intertidal. That feeds the sand to the upper backshore area, which is all multiple dunes. There's a small marsh in behind, which has a small outlet, and and then on the interior of Monroe's Island, we're just seeing them now. There's quite a few small flanking spits which protect an abatement, which is probably a fair bit of wildlife and sea bird life. We're just flying at about 500 feet and about 60 miles per hour, going along the backside of Monroe's Island. The shore here again is extensive wide sand and mud flats. There's a fair bit of coarse material in it. And as we swing across on the backside of the beach of these Caribou Provincial Park over to Monroe's Island, you can see the multiple dune complex. We're just looking into Webster's Gully right now. We missed just a little bit of the back of that big beach, but that's okay. This one at the Webster's Gully is similar, wide sand, low sand but wide sand beach. We'll be coming up to the Northumberland Ferry Terminal in a second. As you approach it, the relief of this shoreline is about 8 to 10 meters. You can see somebody's put in a lot of riprap along the lower shore to try and protect it. There's a wharf at Jesse's Cove. And then between Jesse's Cove and the ferry terminal, there's a nice pocket beach, sand dune in the backshore with a small marsh, and extensive sand flats in front of the sand beach. The headlands, though, on the other hand, are much coarser. The Northumberland Ferry crosses from Pictou over to Wood Island, PEI. You can see the facilities associated with it, the break wall on the western side, and the loading facilities, the areas for cars that are waiting for the ferry. And on the far side of the terminal is a much more natural shoreline with a wide intertidal mudflat. In Caribou Harbour, where we're going now, we're following the inner shore first. The backshore is a bit more relief to it. The intertidal coarse material at the top, mixed in the middle, and then seems to be more sandy at the base, although there's places where it's more sandy at the top too. We're just going by some of the small barriers. The first one had an outlet coming from the marsh, probably ephemeral, but it's open right now. Sand dune with marsh behind it. And as the second one also has an outlet to it. It's open right now. extends along the back of the barrier quite a ways, which means it doesn't have very much power to break its way through, so it's marsh in the back of it. The beach is probably prograding, looks like sand, mostly sand dune. Up at the head of Caribou Harbour, closer to Three Brooks, you've got a much wider intertidal flat. The middle foreshore is mixed sediment, and the back shore is a low eroded bank. Some of the trees are falling in. You can swing it around. There's a couple of small barrier beaches, all open to the sea. This particular complex is mostly marsh. It has a little bit of a dune cap beach in front of it. It has a very intricate tidal channel network. Wide sand flats in front of it too. And you switch into more of an eroded bank, probably 1 to 5 meters, maybe not quite that high. And then again in the low-lying area, a marsh with a sand beach in front and sand flats, extensive sand flats at this low tide stage. And that's followed again by a small barrier which seems to have an opening at the sort of east end. Just at the head of Waterside Harbour now. It's pretty well erosional cliff all the way along the back. Some very prosperous looking houses all along this back shore. The middle intertidal is sand and cobble, well not boulder, a few boulders. And then a very low gradient sand flat. Coming up on Waterside River, or the town of, and then I think it's Caribou River. The mouth of Caribou River. Our time is 1727. There's a structure, a couple of structures in front of the river mouth, which may be natural or not. They look natural, I guess. And then at the head, just as we swing around, we'll be seeing Waterside Provincial Park. The park in the background there is a series of prograded beach ridges. It was begun in 1980, the park, and it links Caribou Island, shown here in the mainland. Caribou Island is a rolling topography of higher relief and low-lying beaches and little estuaries. Following the backside of Caribou Island right now. A lot of marsh. This was actually joined to the mainland by a causeway in 1922, and then they built the road in 1947. And then the beach started built in front of the causeway. This outer part of Caribou Island is not prograding like the proximal end. However, as you see in some of these embayments, there's a fair bit of low tide flats and wetland vegetation. Very extensive low gradient shore along here. Looks like conglomerate, maybe headlands. October 23rd, 2000, and we're just flying at around 300 feet. Just coming up to the backside of Caribou Island. This part is called Kenneth Point area. Kenneth Point, as you can see, there's flanking spits built behind the drumlin. Then as you come up to the point, called Mackenzie's Point, I think. Well, no, maybe we haven't got to Mackenzie's Point yet. We're still at Kenneth Point. There's a mixed sediment in the intertidal, extensive low tide flats, mixed sediment, and then there's a low erosional scarp at the top. There's sort of many homes built along or cottages along Caribou Island. It's quite a popular area to come in the summer. The pleasure craft anchored offshore. And there's a number of embayments like this one coming up. Which are still open to the sea. I'm not sure if the current would be that strong, but maybe at high tide it would be, but low tide it doesn't look that strong, where you'd have to boot these off or somehow deflect the oil away from these marsh areas. The outer shore is a mixture of headlands, which are glacial till and bedrock, and flanking spits and tombolos in behind, as you see right here. It's sort of a paired tombolo that's built onto the island. Swinging around into another embayment. I'm not sure if it has a name. There was a small spit at the end of the island, or the headland. Then as you come in further to the embayment, you've got extensive marsh, back of a narrow sand beach with dune, and extensive low tide flat. We'll just swing around at the head of the harbor, and you can see the two spits that came out across it, and then we're just swinging back towards the backside, which is, I believe, Little Point. There's an extensive shoal that was once the headland for this part. The end of Caribou Island, just coming into view in a minute. There's a real strip development of cottages on the landward side. You'll find in a minute there's a large spit, sand spit, very, very wide, extensive sand flat in front of it, ridge and runnel. There, you're just seeing it now, and it appears to be prograding, whereas on probably we'll find on the other side it's actually eroding. As we come down to the end of Caribou Reef, Gull Point, and the lighthouse, we'll head over to Pictou Island. So we're just traveling over to Pictou Island. We're just 1733, and we're flying at about 550 feet, and we're traveling at about 100